I'm Dr. Bart Rademacher, and this is Prescription for Your Transformation: Real People, Real Conversations, and Real Success. And this portion of the series of the platform is all about regenerative medicine. Yeah, I have the wellness aspect and also the general prescription of our lives, talking to all sorts of exemplars in the field of personal development, in coaching, in business, in marketing, whatever that is. But this portion is restricted just simply to regenerative medicine. The focus of this part is really about helping people uncover the science-based information that might be relevant for them. And so the important part of this is I am presenting to you science-based evidence out of peer-reviewed research so that you can begin to decide for yourself the relevance of this information, how it could potentially apply for yourself in whatever kind of medical condition that you might have. So this is really direct for both physicians as well as the consumer to be able to navigate the very confusing field of regenerative medicine. So for today, I'm bringing to you a study that was published just very recently in the Journal of Clinical Neurology and Neurosurgery, and this is the February edition for that. And so this is about the intravenous infusion of autoserum expanded autologous mesenchymal cells in spinal cord injuries. So that's a mouthful, right? It is the infusion of mesenchymal stem cells or mesenchymal stromal cells derived from the patient themselves into patients that sustained a non-penetrating trauma that caused a spinal injury. So the trial was actually registered in Japan in association with the Medical Association and in collaboration with the senior authors of Costas and Waxman from the Yale. So let's put this in its perspective. Spinal cord injury is a major cause of disability. And according to the WHO in a previous study from quite some time ago, actually, but the range was about 200 to 1100 per million, depending on what country you are in. But the problem with that is that the current options, therapeutic options, remain somewhat limited. Now, in previous studies in stroke patients, delivered some conclusive evidence of the benefit of early treatment with mesenchymal stromal cells in these kinds of patients. So the authors had looked at that evidence and had decided that this would be appropriate time to research that in specific spinal cord patients. And in this particular study, they examined 13 patients. So this is a phase 2, a study of intravenous infusion of bone marrow derived autologous MSCs, single infusions, and the product was actually processed under GMP. And so that's an important part. It took several weeks to actually process the MSCs. But interesting enough, the culture medium that they actually used for that was the patient's own serum, as indicated that the serum is a great medium for that type of expansion. So the authors also relate to or refer to other studies that have looked at these kinds of MSCs, but the injection route was different. It was either intramedullary or intrathecal. And as I'll discuss in a little bit, the relevance of that and how beneficial this has been to give it to intravenously. So what they did is that in addition to the feasibility of the study or the processing, the safety as well as the neurological function was assessed. Some of the studies or protocols that were used were one which was the American Spinal Injury Association Impairment Scale, the ASIA scale, as well as assessing daily living abilities, also using the spinal cord independence measure, the SCIM-3. So they found no serious events due to the injections. And they found actually in about 92%, so basically 12 out of 13 patients, based on the ASIA scale, that there was a significant improvement. And some of that improvement was actually found within 24 hours. So important in the assessment of or evaluation of this particular study is to understand that this was an unblinded study. Obviously, in our scientific world, double blind is a key component of it. And there's no control, obviously. And so there could always be a placebo effect, and there could be bias, from the observers themselves. However, improvement was significant. As I mentioned, improvement was found almost immediately in some of those patients. And so the relevance of this is severalfold, because the financial burden on people with spinal cord injury is very, very significant. And even the slightest improvements in their actual condition or quality of life has dramatic effects on themselves as well as the people around them. So this is a key, critical thing to think about in these kinds of studies, not expecting complete recovery, but having a significant recovery was determined in 92% of the patients. Um, the the idea of giving intravenous mesenchymal cells is important part, because what is interesting is that the effect of the circulation of these cells is not limited to just the brain itself. But when we look at the benefits, the theory behind how the brain and how the spinal cord has benefit from this, it's either through neuroprotection and immunomodulation. Obviously, these are things that occur during trauma. But also interesting, the induction of axonal sprouting. So that's, for the layperson, that's when nerve cells begin to put out different branches to make new connections. And that's part of the repair process, or a neuroplasticity of our nerves. Remyelination is another part. And here's an important part: the restoration of the blood brain and spinal cord barrier, as well as, interesting enough, a component that we are now discovering is the enhancement of remote gene expression. So as I'm wrapping it up, what's important here is that other studies have not delivered significant results, and these were typically through intrathecal and intramedullary results, injections. And furthermore, stroke patients have benefits quite significantly from MSC infusions. So what we take away from this is that, while in Japan, where the study was held, there's a temporary limited application for this type of approach. As further evaluation and clinical studies that proceed, as well as other studies out there indicating and confirming scientifically based evidence that this actually is beneficial. And so for the listener, I would suggest this, is that when you are having problems, or people that are having problems with spinal cord injuries, there is that potential to have significant neurological improvement with the delivery of intravenous stem cells. So I'd suggest that you do your research. There's a link here for the particular study that is indicated. And what's exciting for this, at least for me, is that the promise of helping patients with a very significant injury, a very debilitating type of quality of life in that sense, with the promise of restoration to at least much improved, potentially normal quality of life. I'm Dr. Bart Rademacher. This is Prescription for Your Transformation: Real People, Real Conversations, and Real Success, bringing to you the February edition of the Clinical Neurology and Neurosurgery Journal on the intravenous use of MSCs. Go follow the link and determine for yourself, the relevance of this study in your personal life. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Dr. Rademacher's Prescription for Your Transformation. Continue the path towards discovering your own authentic genius by tuning in next time for more real conversations with real people.